Saturday night, UFC 289, Nunes versus Aldana, going down at the Rogers Arena in Vancouver, British Columbia, Wildfire, Canada.
Yeah, well, Wildfires are in the east, Vancouver in the west, so at least we're safe in that regard.
It's true.
Mike's like, Canada's Canada. It's all their fault.
It's just one big province above, somewhere above Toronto.
It's a nice little town of Canada.
Yeah, it's a county. Let's see. Before we talk about the handful of major fights going down on this card, it's a great card, by the way.
It's good names.
Any other fights or fighters that you guys want to spotlight for our viewers and listeners?
Oh, you can start it off.
I guess, yeah, I'll go first real quick. I guess one of my main ones really is the Miranda Maverick fight. She's fighting Jasmine Jasudavicius. I think it's Maverick's time to shine, man. I really love most of her performances, and I really think she's got a ton of skill. I think she's a really good prospect, so I just hope she can capitalize on here. She's dropped the ball a couple times in her UFC career so far, but I think she can. I think this is a totally winnable fight for her, so I hope she can capitalize here.
Hell yeah, man!
And honestly, man, that's really the big one for me. There is Aman Zahabi as well, but I'll let Mark take the rest of them. He might have a little bit more in depth for some of the other ones.
Yeah, I'll mention a couple. I'm looking forward to that Maverick fight as well. I hope she can perform up to what she's capable of there, because I do think she should win that fight. I'm interested to see Blake Bilder in his second fight. He had a very strong debut win. He's fighting Kyle Nelson, who I think is like 1-4 in the UFC. So you'd like to think Bilder can look good again. We'll see if he can. And then, despite David Dvorak getting kind of bumped down this card and getting a late replacement opponent in Steve Erceg, if that's how you say it, he's actually got a really solid resume. He's fought a lot of dudes. Apparently, he has filthy jiu-jitsu, so I'm curious to see if he can pull off a surprise and knock off David Dvorak in that fight. So I'll be interested to see that one.
All right. Well, here we go. First fight that we are going to discuss is the featured bout on the prelims on ESPN and ESPN Plus. Nassourdine Imavov versus Chris Curtis. So Imavov, the 28-year-old out of Paris, France, he is 12-4 as a pro, 5 knockouts, 4 submissions on his record. Never been knocked out, has been submitted just once. He is coming off of, I would say, a disappointing loss against Sean Strickland back in January of this year. He will be standing across from Chris Curtis, the 35-year-old out of Cincinnati, Ohio. He's 30-10 as a pro with 17 knockouts on his record. He's also coming off of a unanimous decision loss against none other than Kelvin Gastelum back in April. Quicker turnaround for Mr. Curtis. Mark, start us off. Give us your take and your pick for Curtis versus Imavov.
Okay. Imavov is the favorite here. He's minus 155. Chris Curtis is plus 125 as the underdog. So fairly close. The reach is actually half an inch on Curtis's side, but it is a 5-inch height advantage for Imavov, which I think is a big deal. Imavov is great with his distance striking. I know he doesn't have the reach here, but he does have the leg reach, and that's going to be a factor with the kicks. He already has a great ability to maintain range. He can snipe from the outside all day, whereas Curtis, we know, likes to be more in that boxing range to land his bigger shots, which I think could prove to be tricky for him here. So I think I see Imavov being able to win the striking. It wouldn't shock me either if this ends up on the mat a time or two, if Imavov decides he needs to mix it up, if it isn't going his way on the feet. I know Curtis trains with Strickland, who obviously just beat Imavov and had a great game plan where he sort of made Imavov look bad. So I'm sure he's in Curtis's ear. I'm sure Curtis will try to at least somewhat replicate that in his own way with his own skills. And there's always the chance of Chris Curtis cracking dudes for sure. I don't want to underrate Chris Curtis at all. But Imavov's chin has looked really solid thus far. And I really think he can just lean on the range here and do enough to win these cards. And it took me, 6 fights in for Chris Curtis in the UFC or something. it took me 6 fights to finally pick a Chris Curtis fight correctly when I took Kelvin to beat him in the last one. So we have reversed the fortunes, and we're on a run now. So trust me, it's going to be Imavov, UD.
Okay, Omar.
It's not a bad pick. But I will be going Chris Curtis for this one. I like Imavov in this fight. I think this is actually a really competitive fight, but I do think that there is something to be said about Strickland having worked Imavov in his previous fight, or at least a good portion of that fight. It's difficult for me to not think that with styles as similar as Chris Curtis and Sean Strickland have, that there aren't going to be significant takeaways from that. And it's not to say that the game plan is going to be exactly the same. You'd have to imagine Imavov had to make some sort of adjustments after that fight as well. But Chris Curtis is a good fighter, man. I think he's gotten. I don't think he gets the respect that he deserves because of his recent losses, but like, he's a solid fighter. He's a very, very good and very smart fighter. So as long as he's on point on that day and we're not just sitting back and just waiting for Imavov to go first, I think Chris Curtis has a hell of a chance to get this fight in a W. So I'm going to go with Chris Curtis by unanimous decision.
Man, this is a fight where I don't want to see either one of these guys take a loss. I really like both these guys as up-and-coming middleweights. I kind of hate that they're fighting each other right now. This is a somewhat close fight to me. I have a hard time picking this one, but I'm going to go with the attributes of Nassourdine Imavov. I think he's going to be the much taller man. He's going to tower over Chris Curtis, and I'm looking for him to bounce back. I was pretty disappointed and let down by his Sean Strickland loss, although he kind of let Sean Strickland do what Sean Strickland does to so many guys. So I'm going to look for Imavov to get back in the win column and bring some more of that striking prowess and fireworks back into the cage this time. Give me Imavov by UD. I'll take it this time. Okay, next up we have the opening bout of the main card, UFC 289, in the middleweight division. Marc-Andre Barriault versus Eryk Anders. Now let me just cue this up real quick. Pause for technical difficulties. Okay, we have Marc-Andre Barriault, Power Bar, the 33-year-old out of Quebec. I'm on fire, Canada. That one was more correct, yes.
Yeah, that is correct, yes.
15-6 overall, 10 knockouts, add 1 submission to that, 1 no contest. Coming off of a win over Julian Marquez back in March. He will be standing across from Eryk "Ya Boy" Anders, the 36-year-old out of Birmingham, Alabama. 15-7, 1 no contest, 9 wins by knockout. Also, coming off of a very nice TKO victory over Kyle Dawkins back in December. Omar, start us off this time. Give us your take and your pick. Barriault versus "Ya Boy" Eryk Anders.
It's a very interesting fight, and I think it's a very competitive fight, but the one thing that's going to make me go Eryk Anders' route is the recent performance that he had against Kyle Dawkins. More than just the actual opponent in Kyle Dawkins, which people will argue left and right whether that's a name of value or not. It had less to do with that for me personally and his actual approach and his actual performance in that fight. That was the most open I've ever seen Eryk Anders as far as letting his hands go, being aggressive, going forward, not waiting, not trying to counter guys that are obviously faster than him. I think he just had the right approach in that fight, and I'm hoping that momentum continues, that thought process, that mindset of going first and being aggressive and letting his hands go, because the man's got power. He's just got to let it go. So if he does that in this fight, I think he smokes Andre Barriault. I'm going to go with Eryk Anders by second round KO.
Okay, Mark.
So the Canadien is the favorite. He is minus 140. Eryk Anders is plus 115. I do think this fight is basically a toss-up, as the odds suggest. It's one of these that I really feel like depends on what form each man shows up in, because I feel like we have seen some varied forms from each of these guys. But my take is the same as Omar's. To try to gauge that, I'm going to look at the most recent forms, and I was really impressed by Eryk Anders' last fight. Now, of course, Barriault's coming off a finish too, and he looked really good. But he didn't look much different than his usual self, who sometimes gets beat, sometimes gets the win. Whereas with Anders, who's a guy I've always been critical of, I thought we saw some real evolution in his game finally. I loved seeing his aggressiveness. He really seemed to finally have a trust in his own weapons and in his defense. He just looked infinitely more comfortable, willing to be in a fight and not just kind of try to not fuck up in there. So, and he's a guy who took MMA on a little bit late, so maybe that comfort is finally coming now. So if we get that same Eryk Anders, I think he can beat Barriault. Barriault always makes the cardio a factor, so that could come into play, but I'd like to think Anders will be okay there, so I will say Anders UD.
So this is a fight that I have never been super high on either one of these guys. But I completely agree that Eryk Anders' recent fight and victory over Kyle Daukaus, I was like, okay, this is what this guy seems like he should have been capable of this whole time.
Yeah.
He looks like he should have plenty of power for 185 pounds, and boy, did he show it in that last fight with Kyle Daukaus. So I'm going to ride with Eryk Anders again here. Give me another second round knockout / TKO over Marc-Andre Barriault.
Nice. On the dog.
Yeah. Okay, next fight up in the featherweight division. One of the most anticipated fights on this card. We have Dan 50K Ige taking on Nate the Train Landwehr. So, Dan Ige, a favorite among MMA purists, I would say. The 31-year-old out of Honolulu, Hawaii. He is 16-6 as a pro. 5 knockouts, add 5 submissions to that in the win column for him. And he's coming off of a knockout victory over Damon Jackson back in January of this year. He will be standing across from the very exciting Nate Landwehr, the 35-year-old out of Clarksville, Tennessee, 17-4 as a pro, 8 knockouts on his record, riding a 3-fight win streak coming into this Saturday night. Most recently, a submission RNC victory over Austin Lingo back in March. Omar, give us your take and your pick this time of Landwehr versus Ige.
This is a very, very interesting fight, man. Dan Ige's a mover, right? Dan Ige likes to move around. He likes to use his footwork a lot, keep his distance, move in and move out when he needs to, and obviously try to take as little damage as humanly possible. Doesn't necessarily always go that direction for Dan Ige. Sometimes he comes out of there looking worse than wear, but it's the plan. Then you have Nate Landwehr, who is basically living up to his moniker in the train and just wants to come forward to destroy you. Whatever happens at that point is basically going to happen, but Nate Landwehr is trying to run over you at almost every turn. The problem is, if you can move out of the way and cut angles on Nate Landwehr, how much of that forward movement and that aggression really matter, right? If Ige can make it a game where he can cut the angles, counter off of those cut angles, and keep his distance and put combos together from the outside and work his way kind of around that 180-degree shell, I think Dan Ige can style on him, honestly, for a good majority of this fight, probably later on in the rounds, more so than the very beginning. But it just seems from a stylistic standpoint, again, at least on paper, that Dan Ige might just have a slight advantage when it comes to the stand-up. So I'm going to go with Dan Ige here, and I'm going to do it by unanimous decision.
Whew. I forgot that I should not always go last, so I will go next. To keep the picking fair. Man, what a tough fight to pick. Oh, my God. I imagine, before hearing the odds from Mark, I would imagine, I'm going to guess. I feel like I'm always wrong about this, but I would guess that this is very close odds.
Not so much.
What's that?
Not so much.
Oh,
I'm going to give him right now. I'll give him right now.
Okay, hang on. Let's see. Maybe we got Dan Ige like minus 250.
That's literally exactly right.
Wow.
Nate Landwehr plus 180.
200.
It's close.
Okay.
Yeah.
1 out of 2. Not bad.
I love two things about Nate Landwehr. I love his technique, and I love his pressure. He is a joy to watch as an MMA fan. It is a ballet of violence from Nate Landwehr. The same can be said to a certain extent for Dan Ige. I think Dan Ige overall is going to possess more power. And if Nate Landwehr beats Dan Ige, that would be a monumental victory at this point, at this stage in his career.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to happen. I think that Dan Ige is going to best Nate Landwehr, and I see him getting a knockout finish over Nate the Train. I'll say end of the first round, which tends to be when Nate gets knocked out if he does.
Omar, what was your finish?
No, he was UD.
I was UD. Yeah, Ige.
Yeah, we're all on the Ige side. Landwehr is 2 inches taller. Ige, though, will actually have a half-inch reach advantage for whatever that's worth. And, yeah, you guys have kind of said it. Landwehr is a tank. He will walk through damage. He won't stop coming unless you turn him off. He's going to do everything he can to make it into a scrap. But I actually think Dan Ige can kind of thrive in this fight. I think he's always done pretty well in scraps. I think that not only does he hit harder, but he is going to be the fighter with the better technique in there. I think he's the slicker striker. I think he can slip some shots and counter with some big ones at times. And I think he can find the chin because Nate, his style is what it is, but he makes the chin available. So I'm going to say Ige can find it. May not only be a one-hitter quitter. He may have to find it a couple times for the shots to accumulate, but I'm going to say Dan Ige knocks Nate out in round 2.
Wow.
I feel like Landwehr, his really, really nice technique comes out when he has worn you down a bit. And
Sure.
when his pressure wears you down. I'm thinking about that Austin Lingo fight. Lingo's a super tough guy, but the pressure of Landwehr eventually got to Lingo, and that's when you saw Landwehr just like absolutely styling on him. Similar things can be said about when David Onama, I think his gas kind of ran low against Landwehr, and that's when Landwehr really turned it up and just looked tremendous.
Yeah.
Completely agree. When dudes start to slow and then Nate becomes the faster fighter, then his technique shines. But before that happens, it's not quite the same.
I see a lot of whiffing in this fight. Nate Landwehr, I think, is going to be throwing a lot of shit, and I just don't think he's going to be landing a ton.
So I write down we're all on Ige, okay?
Oh, you're writing
All
it down? Very good. I always forget to write that shit down. Every week I'm like, I got to write it down.
I always just write the names. I never write what finish we pick. I should. But I write the names because I keep track of our records.
The position of this next fight on the card is
It's because
confusing.
Canada, baby.
Is that what it is?
Yep.
Oh,
Trying
all
to build
right.
the next Canadian star. Same
Okay.
reason Barriault's on the main card and Imavov and Curtis are not.
It's rude.
Let me just point out that this is going very well so far tonight. That the show, I don't know how we got to this point already, but we have. And I'm not mad about it. Okay, in the welterweight division, Mike Malott taking on Adam Fugitt. Fuck it.
Fugitt.
I know. If I was him, I would say it like that. Hey, man, what's your name? Fuck it. Adam Fugitt, Mike Malott, very exciting welterweight bout. Let me cue this up real quick.
This is the first time ever we've had two double T's fighting each other.
This is true.
Oh, shit.
Names that end in double T.
Okay, proper Mike Malott, the 31-year-old out of Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. He is 9-1 as a pro with one draw. All of his wins have come by way of finish. 4 knockouts, 5 subs. He is riding a 5-fight win streak. following a loss and a draw that came in 2015. Most recently, he defeated Johan Nunes by submission back in February. His opponent this time, Adam Fugitt, the 34-year-old out of Eugene, Oregon, 9-3 as a pro, 5 knockouts, 3 subs. Also coming off of a win. Omar, why don't you start us off? Give us your take and your pick of Fugitt versus Malott.
I mean, I got to say I like Malott quite a bit. I think it's interesting that coming off of a win against Johan Nunes, he gets Adam Fugitt, who doesn't really seem to have. Maybe I'm putting more emphasis on the name value of Nunes at this point, but even off of Mickey Gall, who Mickey Gall is who Mickey Gall is, but there is still some name value that's there as well. So it just seems interesting that we're going in this direction now. Maybe they are just kind of feeding Fugitt to the Sharks in a sense, right? Giving somebody that Malott can beat potentially. But the records are relatively, tight as far as, having 9 wins. Fugitt obviously has a couple more losses than Malott does, but I just think this one is kind of tailor-made for Malott at this point right now. I think he's going to go in there and I think he's going to put on a performance. He's a finisher for sure. I don't think this goes to decision, at least not against somebody like Fugitt. So I'm going to go with Mike Malott by first round submission.
I will go next. Ever since Mike Malott has come into the UFC, I have been a big Mike Malott guy. I think he has a tremendous stature and build for welterweight. And my man is a finisher. He seems like a super nice guy. He's like an unassuming, super nice guy from Canada. But he has a serious skill set. He has very good power at 170 pounds. So give me Mike Malott by knockout. I think that Fugitt is a very tough guy. He's not going to get blown away in the very opening round. I would be surprised if he did. So give me Mike Malott, third round knockout. Okay, Mark.
Okay, Mike Malott, the favorite. He's minus 215. Fugitt is plus 170 as the underdog. Fugitt actually has a 4-inch reach advantage, which is an interesting wrinkle to this because it's not as if he doesn't carry some finishing ability. He does, especially if he could ever get on top of Malott and kind of be able to rain down with the long arms that he has. But like you guys, I've been impressed by Malott so far. I think that he can mostly keep this standing. I think he can outstrike Fugitt fairly consistently. I even think if it does hit the mat, that Malott's grappling could potentially shine there. So I think this is kind of one of those where the UFC must feel good about the matchup because I'm sure they're trying to build Malott and get him a win in front of the Canadian fans. There's not a ton of young Canadian stars at the moment. I'm sure they're hoping Malott can be one of them. You can tell that obviously by the placement in the feature fight here. But I think he's going to finish it. I'm with you guys. He's a finisher. I could see it either way. I think it really just depends on if more of this fight happens standing or on the mat. But I'll go TKO. I'll say round 2 TKO for Mike Malott.
Okay. That brings us to this co-main event of the evening. Woo-hoo. My God. I'm so excited for this fight. Oh, my God. This is going to be a fight.
Mark's going to have a fucking heart attack is what it is.
No disrespect to these ladies in the main event, but this is the fight on this card that I'm going to have a heart attack going into the fight.
Yeah.
You know?
This is the main event.
Oh, my God. Okay, Charles do Bronx Oliveira taking on Beneil Dariush in the lightweight division. The former champ, Charles do Bronx, 33-year-old out of Sao Paulo, Brazil. He is 33-9 with 1 no contest, 21 victories by submission. Add another 9 knockouts to that. My man is a killer. Lost his belt in his last outing against Islam Makhachev back in October of 2022. Got finished in the second round by Mr. Makhachev. That snapped a 1 million fight win streak by Charles Oliveira. How many times did he win the belt from Gaethje? And it was vacant? Remind
No,
me.
he
won it
won
from
the
Dustin?
belt from Chandler.
From Chandler.
Not from Chandler. Vacant belt
Vacant
against
against
Chandler.
Chandler. Defended it twice against Poirier and Gaethje.
Mm-hmm.
Also has wins over Tony Ferguson, Kevin Lee, a number of other names. Charles has been around for a minute and has sort of fought a who's who in the UFC. All right, standing across from Beneil Dariush, another guy who has been around for a minute, has also fought a who's who, and has been mounting quite a resume as of late, with quite the highlight reel as well. Beneil, the 34-year-old, fighting out of California. He's 22-4 with 1 draw, 5 wins by knockout, 8 wins by submission, and he is riding a 8-fight UFC win streak in the lightweight division coming into this weekend. Give this man an effing title shot if he wins this fight.
I mean,
I know. Most recently, I should say, he looked incredible against the rising Mateusz Gamrot back in October. Mark, start us off this time. Give us the odds, your take, and ultimately your pick.
Okay, the odds.
it's got to be a pick'em.
The former champion is the underdog. He is
Disrespect.
plus 125.
Oh, my God.
Neil is minus 150.
Oh,
would-
shit. That's a lot more.
Disrespect.
I would guess that it probably opened very close and that the money has come in on Beneil. The reason I say that is because the whole world is picking Beneil. Every single thing that I have read or seen this week has been a pick for Beneil. I have not seen a human being pick Charles Oliveira yet, which is mind-blowing to me that we are just dismissing Charles Oliveira in this way. I get it that Beneil's on this absurd run. But your boy is going with Charles Oliveira, as you may have guessed. I get it. I love this guy. It's been well documented on this show that I'm a huge fan of Charles Oliveira. And maybe I am being blinded and I don't even realize it, but I truly feel like Charles Oliveira is going to win this fight. I forgot to say they're the same height, 2 inches of reach for Charles. Every time I break down this fight in my brain, I land on the fact that my X factor is the finishing ability that Charles Oliveira possesses in the striking. They are both utterly disgusting grapplers, and I pray we get some grappling exchanges here because they'll be incredible. And obviously Beneil is dangerous and carries power on the feet too, but I have a much harder time seeing Beneil shutting Charles' lights off with a shot than I do the other way around. Of course, Beneil's path to victory could be that he drops Charles and dives on top of him, like many others refuse to do because of the jiu-jitsu. Obviously, we saw Islam not be afraid to do it. Beneil could be in the same boat, and maybe he wins that way. I do get that Charles won't get this time to reset that we've seen him use against other guys who will drop him and then refuse to follow him to the floor. But I'm going to say Beneil gets caught in a flurry. You know Charles is going to come out hot, especially after how disappointed he was in his last performance. We've seen how hard he comes out. We've seen how quickly people like Poirier and Gaethje have been thrown off by the power that is coming back at them from Charles Oliveira and the accuracy of the shots that are hitting them. We've seen Beneil get blitzed before. I mean, we've also seen him survive a blitz and get his own KO, such as he did against Jakar Close. But we've seen that he can get caught in a blitz and get his lights put out. Think about Alexander Hernandez. And Charles can do the same thing. Not to mention, as unreal as Dariush looked against Gamrot, and I was one of the people saying it. I came on here and I raved about him. Part of me wonders if we're overrating his scrambling and grappling a bit. Because as good as Gamrot is, it was only 2 fights ago that he won a split decision over Diego Ferreira, where the scrambling was pretty even. Scrambling was pretty even. Grappling was pretty... I'm struggling. Where the grappling was pretty even throughout the whole fight. And Charles Oliveira ain't Diego Ferreira. So, I don't know. I could be spectacularly wrong here. Maybe the Charles run is going to come to an end as suddenly as it kind of came about. Maybe Beneil has just hit this crazy place where he's just not going to lose right now. it's all entirely possible. I mean, it's a fucking coin toss. We all know it's a coin toss. But I'm rolling with Charles Oliveira. I am going to say it is a round 2 knockout for Charles.
Wow, knockout for Charles. Wow. Okay, Omar.
This fight is terrible to pick, man. I can tell you that by the time that this fight goes on, I'm just more interested to actually see it than I am to pick it, being 100% honest. But considering this is what we do on here, and considering I want a little bit of drama, I will be picking Beneil Dariush to win this fight. The reality is, man, is there's a lot of things here that aren't 100% for Charles, like I feel like a lot of times they can be, right? We put a lot of value in his submission game and his ability to finish, and I just think that Dariush is not the easiest guy to finish in the world. And while he has been finished before, so is Charles. And Charles has been submitted quite a few times for all the submitting that he does as well. So we know that he has vulnerabilities. Maybe he's sharpened a lot of them up and tucked some of them away. But a fight can sometimes bring a lot of things to light that have been put away for quite some time. And Dariush is in a great spot right now. I think that Charles Oliveira, having come off of that loss to Islam, losing his belt, not going into a rematch with him, kind of, I don't want to say shying away from that rematch, shying away from that opportunity, but definitely not something that he was keen on taking, which makes you wonder where his head is at from a mental perspective. Dariush has been screaming at the heavens for the last 2 years to give him a goddamn title shot. So we know that this man is hungry, and he's trying to kill somebody to get that belt. So I'm going to roll with Dariush here, man. I don't know if he gets a finish here. If he does, I'll be honest, I think he submits Oliveira, but I do think it's a tall order. So I'm just going to stay safe here and go Dariush by unanimous decision.
Side note, it's fucking ridiculous that this isn't a 5-round fight. I mean, maybe it doesn't even make it through 3, but it's fucking stupid.
Oh, this is one of those times where I just automatically assumed it was 5 rounds.
Yeah, it feels like a 5-rounder.
I was going to say I think he takes 3 out of the 5, but...
Yep, 3 fucking rounds.
Boo. Hopefully it's a finish then, and it wouldn't have mattered anyway, I guess.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm insulted that Charles de Bronx is the underdog in this fight. That is insulting to me. Given his record, his overall resume, that he's a former champ, he just literally lost the belt. And I will be taking Charles in this fight to win.
Let's go. Me and Mike versus the world, baby. And Charles. Me, Mike, and Charles. Excuse me.
Let's go. Yeah, I think. I mean, I do think it's going to be. I think it is a close fight on paper. I wouldn't have been that surprised if the odds might have been even a little bit closer. I go back to Charles's ace up his sleeve that Charles can take a punch, not meaning that he has a great chin, meaning like he could get rocked and kind of half fall down. And that's sort of like a insurance policy. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, we talk about it all the time.
We've touched on this before. Because it happened in his fights with Gaethje and Poirier and Chandler in recent memory, where it's like he has extra lives in the game. Like you can rock him.
The only thing is if he does that with Dariush is going to dive on top of him in 1 second.
That is correct. That is 100% correct. A lot of guys aren't going to chase that kid to the ground, which is why he does it in the first place. Because even rocked, that kid can still figure something out to keep himself safe. I think he just feels more comfortable being on the ground. But so does Dariush. Dariush wants to live on the ground as well. He's not necessarily looking to stand and bang with people when he goes in there. So the moment Oliveira gives him an opportunity to go down to the ground and throw some ground and pound, you bet your ass Dariush is going to be there on all fours doing just that.
I don't entirely agree. I think Dariush very much is a stander and a banger.
I'm not saying he can't. I'm saying that I feel like a lot of times his bread and butter is that ground game.
Yes,
that's
he's very good
his
on the
bread
ground.
and butter.
But I think Charles is better.
Sure.
I give Charles the nod there.
We're going to find out, son.
I don't think either of them have the crispest striking. I think Beneil is a bit more of a brawler.
Yeah.
But I think that there's sort of an even chance that each one of them could catch the other one. I think Charles is a bit more crisp. So Yeah, I'm gonna go with Charles, and I'll say it's gonna. This fight has to end in a finish. It just has to. I feel like I can't sit here and take somebody by decision. I'll say Charles by a finish. I'll say third round.
You're saying sub or knockout?
I'll say sub.
Sub.
Charles's Muay Thai is very good. It's especially for his style and his approach to the fight.
Yeah,
his Muay Thai is very good.
Telling you, man.
Very aggressive.
It's my X factor, baby. I'm hoping.
Yeah, no, his striking. I think his striking. If we're going just striking for striking, I think his striking is significantly better than Dariush's is, because Dariush definitely does a lot of ducking under and just throwing hooks and things like that, trying to move inside and closing the distance. But Oliveira has a lot of good straight punches, long knees, which really help him out, especially when he wants to close the distance and enter the clinch. Those knees are like paramount for him to do that. So he's stand-up is going to be interesting, I think, for Oliveira. But I think at the end of the day, I think everybody who's watching that fight wants to see what happens when it hits the ground.
Oh, yeah, so badly.
Okay.
I'll tell you what, Dariush's confidence is in a hell of a place right now. I don't know if you guys saw the clip where they asked him about fighting Islam, and you hear other people get asked about it, and they're like, yeah, like, you know, obviously I have to think about how to counter the wrestling, and I think maybe I could do this, think maybe I could do that. Dariush was literally like, yeah, I can't see anything he does that's better than me. Like, he was literally like, I do everything better than him. Like, straight up. I was like, okay, Beneil, damn.
Dude, I was listening to Chael, as I do now. He's got another one on his list. Dariush.
Oh,
what? He says his name wrong?
Bro, he can't say a name right
wrong.
if it was written down in front of him phonetically.
Yeah.
He is the worst.
He's such a talker. Why does he get his name wrong?
Do you want to hear another one that's the worst? Sergey. Like, if Sergey wasn't the most common name.
Pavlovich?
What does he say?
Yes, Sergey.
What does he say?
Yeah, see, you would even think, even Serge, like, you'd be okay with, right?
It's not Serge?
Sir G.
Come on.
Sergi?
Sergi.
He's clowning, man. He's clowning.
Yeah, he does this
I don't know. And if this is all a troll, it's amazing, because he's doing this with like every other name. It's out of control. I think it's so crazy. And it like makes me sad in the car when I'm listening to him say these names just
How
so
can he
terribly.
get it so wrong? He is in the world. He's in the world. Like we are outside of it, commenting on it. He is in and of the world.
Dude, some people just have blockages with names. I remember I used to listen to Francesa a lot, Mike Francesa, and for years, like the best player, one of the best players in baseball, was Albert Pujols. Like you would hear the name Pujols 100 times.
Pujols, yeah, Pujols.
For a decade, Francesa called him Pullholtz. Pullholtz.
What?
And just did it for a decade straight, as if no one was ever like, "Hey, Mike, it's Pujols," and he never watched a broadcast. Not just uninterrupted decade straight. Albert Pujols.
Pujols.
Yep.
Pujols.
Ariel
have these name blockages, man.
Ariel has called out Chael Sonnen before on like certain names, especially when he goes on the show and stuff like that. And Chael's like, "Yeah, I can't do it. Can't do it."
Oh my god.
All right.
Dude, nothing will ever take the cake of name pronunciations than the comedian Joey Diaz on Rogan.
God.
Oh god,
Fucking
yeah,
calling
he's
Khabib like Kalabib.
Yeah.
And what was he called? Stiopich.
Yeah.
Okay. Too much fun. Okay, main event time. Here we go. UFC 289. We have in the main event, headlining this event, once again, going down at the Rogers Center in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Amanda Nunes defending her bantamweight title against Irene Aldana. Excuse me, is this the featherweight title? Or the bantamweight title? It is bantamweight.
Yep.
Second guess myself for a second. Okay, champion.
If it ain't Norma Dumont, baby, it's not the featherweight title. Let's go.
Dumont or bust.
That's right.
So we have Amanda the Lioness Nunes, the 35-year-old out of Bahia, Brazil. Her record stands at 22-5, 13 wins coming by way of knockout. Add 4 subs to that, brings you up to about an 80% finish rate. She lost her title back in December of 2021 to Juliana Pena, and then wrenched it back emphatically from Pena back in July of 2022, earning a dominant decision victory, winning the bantamweight title back. She will be standing across from the rising, the surging Irene Aldana, a 35-year-old out of Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico. Her record stands at 14-6 with 8 knockouts. Add 3 subs to that. Only 3 of her wins have gone the distance. She's riding a 2-fight win streak coming into this title fight against Yana Santos and most recently Macy Chazon back in September, which was the now somewhat iconic liver upkick from the bottom knockout in round 3 of that fight. Tremendous stuff. Okay, Mark, start us off with the odds, your take on this fight, and ultimately your pick.
Amanda Nunes, minus 330 as the favorite. Irene Aldana, plus 250 underdog. Size is basically identical. There's an inch of height on the Aldana side. There's a half inch of reach on the Nunes side. I have a fairly weird feeling since this fight has been booked that Aldana may catch and drop Amanda Nunes. Her hands are just very crispy, and we've seen Nunes getting hit a little bit more these days, but I'm going to resist it. I'm going to make the smart pick. I'm going to say that Nunes will fight smart, that she'll use her wrestling, which is certainly the easiest path to victory here for her, because that's the way this should go. You'd like to think that's how she approaches this fight. And I'm not saying she can't strike with Aldana, because of course she can. She's fucking Amanda Nunes, excuse me. But it's better for her to have Aldana thinking about both. So I got to think she mixes it up here. She should not be letting Aldana feel totally comfortable that there's no takedown coming and that she can just strike freely, because when that happens, Aldana's really dangerous. It is another 135-pound fight for Amanda now, which I know she's loving less and less, and the cut, I feel like, is starting to wear on her a bit more as time goes on, but I do think she can still get this done. I mean, think about it. The Macy Chasson fight, like, yes, it was an unbelievable knockout from bottom, but she was getting out-wrestled by Macy Chasson before that happened. So I'd like to think Amanda Nunes can out-wrestle her as well. So I do think Aldana's live. Like I said, I love her boxing. There's kind of a vibe with these Mexican fighters right now where they're like all breaking through at once, so it almost feels like it's just going to happen here. But I will go with Amanda Nunes by... I didn't think about the bye now that I'm thinking about it. Will she finish her? I'm going to say by UD.
Omar?
Yeah. You know, it's hard to really gauge kind of where Amanda is in her career at this point, because, you know, we've been talking about her retirement for quite some time. I think there was something that I recently saw about her wanting or thinking about retiring after the Juliana Pena loss, and then was like, there's no way I'm leaving this sport with Juliana Pena having beaten me. So she went back and she did that again. And I'm never of the mindset that people that have their foot halfway out the door are in the best position for these high-level fights. I also think, and I was just listening to this today, I think it was, I don't know if it was Anik Florian or who the hell it was. I don't remember who it was. But the whole silk sheet thing, right? It's difficult to get out of bed at 5 a.m., go for all these runs, cut all this weight, make all these sacrifices when you're wearing silk sheets or silk pajamas, right?
Right.
It is a different mindset, and we see the issues now with McGregor, right? We don't even know if McGregor is going to be fighting Chandler yet. Like, nothing's actually official, and this man is out here living his best life. So,
yeah, man.
I say all that really to say that I don't know where Amanda's mindset is, and while I don't think she's looking to lose, and obviously she's going to be fighting hard, I think once you start getting to that point, there is a bit of a complacency when it comes to the acceptance of a loss. And I don't think Irene Aldana is even with a toe in that water. Aldana's hungry. Aldana is looking to get that belt. I think Aldana knows she's in a very unique position as a result of the standings of bantamweight, right? Because the reality is Aldana's resume is not necessarily the flashiest. It's not necessarily the best resume, right? She's beaten recently Macy Chasson, which Mark said, she got caught with a beautiful finish. But if you take that fight as a whole, it wasn't like that was a dominant performance, right? If you look at Yana Santos, that was probably a more, something you can really put into the highlight reel as well as far as overall performance. And then before that, she lost to Holly Holm. And Holly Holm got her ass smoked by Amanda Nunes. And, we don't need to do all this MMA math, but my point is Aldana is in a position right now that she may not find herself in again if she loses this fight. And I think there's just too many things that might be working against Nunes in this fight, probably from a personal and maybe even from a striking perspective, that Aldana might be able to take and capitalize against. And if she can stuff a couple of takedowns, because it's not like Nunes has the greatest wrestling in the world. It is effective, and she does what she needs to do, and she definitely is able to take people down and control them on the ground. But if Aldana is able to keep her standing upright, this might be a more difficult night for Amanda Nunes than we think. I got to pick, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, are you done? Are you gonna make a pick?
No, that was it.
Coming
that was
to
it.
my TED Talk.
I was just gonna go there. I'm going to go with Aldana here. I'm going to go with Aldana on the long shot.
Like it.
Knockout?
I think so, man. I don't know if she's going to beat her for 3 rounds.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to go Aldana, I feel like knockout's the way you got to go.
Yeah.
But are you going to go with Aldana by liver kick from her back?
You'll never see that again in a high-level competition.
No.
Never again.
Crazy, dude. Crazy.
I'm going to go with a 4th round knockout.
All right.
Okay. Over I go. You make very interesting points about the Silk Sheets thing. I know they have a little girl now, right? A little girl?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I'm not picking against Amanda Nunes. Not yet. I mean, she just I'll say it again. She so emphatically got her belt back from Pena. You got to think, yeah, maybe she does just treat us like another day at the office now. Now that she is, compiling this resume of this title reign. And maybe that's a good thing, maybe that's a bad thing. I think it's probably, for her, it's a good thing. She knows she's so confident. She's so confident in her entire skill set. She's so confident in her hands and her power. I think she's just going to, Saturday night, she's going to work. It's time to eat for the Lioness, man. And until she really gets knocked off that pedestal, I think she had a weird off night in that first night against Pena. Don't we know that?
I totally agree. I think she was injured in camp, couldn't train. There was a lot that went into it.
There was also the fact that she switched camps, and that was the one that she officially started going to her own camp.
Yeah.
There was that whole drama with Kayla Harrison at ATT, and I don't think it was necessarily them favoring Kayla Harrison, but at the same time they were putting a lot of attention on Kayla Harrison when Amanda felt like, I'm the UFC champ, like, fucking I should be number one. I should be the one that's really taken care of here, and not the girl you guys kind of want to be the number one girl here. So there was a lot of that stuff going on. And like I said, man, for those people who don't think mindset and the mental game of life itself continuously fucking people on a daily basis doesn't play into how a fighter walks into that octagon, you are incredibly naive. And I just, like I said, I don't think that Amanda Nunes is in a point now where, with all these things kind of in front of her, right? The idea of retirement, which I think she's been playing around with for a little while. And personally, I think win or lose, I think we're going to see Amanda Nunes done at this one.
Really?
I think I do think she drops her gloves at the end. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. Well,
Dude, if that happens, they're going to call Norma Dumont and be like, hey, Norma, can you make 135. Oh no! All right. Nice doing business with you. You're released.
Bullshit.
Oh, by the way, I didn't give my pick. I didn't give my pick. I think Aldana is super tough. I think I'm taking the same pick as Mark. I'll take UD for Nunes.
Mike, we have picked the same 6 people in these 6 fights.
Oh my God.
Omar is on Aldana, on Dariush, and on Curtis. So there could be major movement from Senor Ortola.
I was gonna say, Daddy's got a couple fucking picks to make up here.
Yeah.
Pretty low on this this list here, so we'll see.